edition of Honest Craft Beer Reviews panel discussion. We've done a couple of these already that we've got in the can and that are available if you're interested in checking them out. We did one on pumpkin beers, and we did one on holiday seasonal beers. And the purpose of these is just for us to hang out and have fun and talk about the style, but also for folks that want to check these out. If they're interested in learning a little bit more about style, they can do so, and hopefully this is helpful to them. Of course, there's nothing better than a good old book by Michael Jackson, The Beer Hunter. If you want to learn about style, he's the guy that really wrote the book on it, and I mean literally wrote the book on beer styles. So our attempts pale in comparison to his, but I think he'd appreciate what we're trying to do, and certainly he was always in favor of a bunch of guys hanging out and having a good beer. So tonight we're actually not talking about a style per se. Same was true of the winter seasonal beers that we did last December, because that category of beers really encompasses a whole plethora of styles, really. You can see pretty much anything these days aged in a bourbon barrel. Of course, we are talking about bourbon barrel-aged beers tonight. And I'm actually starting to see more and more brewers start to do more things besides imperial stouts and barley wines, which were probably those are the two that I have the most experience with going back into the 90s. So what we'll do tonight is I'll just give a little bit of background of what I'm familiar with, and then I'll talk about the beer, the bourbon barrel beer that I have, and then I'll pass it around the room for color commentary, and everybody's got a particular beer that they're going to talk about and their observations on the style, and when we're done with that, we will we'll open it up and we'll just have a free-form discussion for a bit. The moderated discussion will begin shortly, but before we do, I'm just going to let everybody go around the horn and introduce themselves. We have the legendary Tom the Beer Whisperer of Mulvey Hill. Tom?
In my own mind, anyway. Yeah, I'm here with a MILF.
Yeah, see what I mean? He's legendary. And only Tom would come to the review with a MILF. And then we've got Scott White. He's the greatest Sam Adams enthusiast on the planet, and I can certainly respect him for that, because Sam Adams has a special place in my heart too, and he's also a big fan of the New England Patriots, and Tom appreciates that, Scott. So Scott,
well, congratulations for the win.
And then we got a guest panelist tonight. We have Scott's friend Justin Wilson, who comes to us with much renown. He's a frequent contributor to Honest Craft Beer Reviews. We appreciate that, and always happy to see a post from him. And Justin, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. All
right. So I'm going to start. Here's the little bit of a history that I know about bourbon barrels, bourbon barrel aging. As I don't really know, and I don't know if anybody knows who the first brewer was to age a beer in bourbon barrels. I'm sure somebody did, but I can tell you that going back to the Scott, did you?
No, just bourbon barrel aging specifically. Nobody knows. I don't think, like you said, it's a bourbon barrel specifically. But if you want to say like barrel aging in a whole, that's a totally different concept.
Oh yeah, and the Europeans have been doing that for a long time. But as far as my experience with craft brewers and American brewers aging in bourbon barrels, I think there's a distinction between that and what you're talking about. You're talking about maybe like a Flanders Red or a Flanders Brown or beers of that nature that are barrel aged to pick up the oakiness, but they're not using the same type of barrel that's been used to store whiskey, so that it sort of absorbs some of those flavors and then infuses them into the beer.
Right. I mean, just to throw this out there as one of the commentaries that anybody can listen to. It's a great commentary to begin with. You can go onto the Savory website that they do the Savory beer tastings. The event down in D.C., I believe they've had it in New York and a couple other places. They do like an audio commentary with sit-down sessions with brewers, and they go and talk about styles of beer Last year in 2014, they had one. It was based on barrel aging, and they had a host of Jim Cook, and he went through his whole commentary on everything that he has been through within the wood aging, and the first one that he's ever did. I absolutely loved it. Was the 1994 Triple Bock, but he actually started the beer in 1992, and at that point in time, he said that there was nobody that he knew of in the world doing beers in used spirit barrels at that time. He said he had to go through a litigation of red tape and red flags, and just to get the beer actually okayed, because they said that beer and the whiskey, bourbon, and spirits are both taxed two different ways. So there's an excise tax between beer and one for spirits. He said so at the time, nobody knew how to tax this beer that was going to be, aged in a spirit barrel. But they okayed it, and he said it was okayed in 1992, but they brewed between 92 and 93, and they kind of like mixed them together and went ahead and released it in 94.
Interesting. And you bring up a good point, because as far as barrel aging is concerned, there are those European beers that get aged in barrels, the Belgian ones I think of, but also the first India Pale Ales most likely went across the ocean in a wood barrel.
Right.
I've read a lot of reports about them picking up oakiness from that, and that makes me think that perhaps whoever it was that decided they were going to do an American bourbon barrel-aged beer probably thought about those barrel-aged beers and said, hey, what if we used a used spirits barrel? So whoever it was, I don't know, but I'm glad they did it. I know that
Genius.
They were genius, and they're an unsung hero wherever they are.
You're brilliant, man.
I know in the 90s, I think for me, the first few, at least that I can recall anyway, of course, Old Dominion, had a bourbon barrel stout that was phenomenal. They still make it, but Dominion, of course, is part of Anheuser-Busch now. But that said, I went to the brewery in the 90s, and I had already had it in bottles, but it was phenomenal there on draft. And my local Trinity Brewhouse in Providence, in the early to mid 90s, they had a whiskey barrel aged porter that was exceptional as well. So somebody put them on the track to do it, and with the notion that you could take a great beer and make it even better by adding those flavors to it. You get, and in a very well executed example of the style, I think, you get the benefit of the flavor without all the alcohol. So you can drink the beer, you can enjoy the beer, you could sip it. They're still most likely going to be sipping beers because most of them are pretty strong, but you don't have to have 30-40% alcohol. So be that as it may, the beer that I chose for this session is actually one of my favorite beers of all time, which is Sierra Nevada Bigfoot. But I've got of course, this is the barrel-aged Sierra Nevada Bigfoot.
Oh, wow. There we go.
This beer was aged in bourbon barrels, and then I further aged it. I've had it for 2 years now, and I'm popping it because I think it's time. Although I think it could probably go longer. I did have it at one of Chuck Triplett's legendary beer tastings. In fact, when I went there in March for the March of 2012, 2 years now, hard to believe, for the premiere of Beer Hunter the movie, we the night before the event we attended a tasting at Chuck's house, and I tried it then, and that's what I had bought a bottle. I think it was like $11 for the bottle, which is not too bad for number one for Bigfoot, but aged bourbon barrel aged, forget about it. It's actually not a bad price. So I was gonna pop it because I was so eager to try it, but then when I had it at Chuck's, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to hang on to it for a while and see how it ages. I will say that as much as I love going to tastings where you've got a million different beers, the plus is you get to try a lot of different beers, at once. But the setback is that you don't have as much time to dwell on them as you might like. I think I would have liked to dwell on that a little bit longer, but I'm going to get to do that tonight a little bit more. And so I've got it here, and I've got it backwards in my Sierra Nevada logo glass, as Tom and I will both tell you. The best glass for a beer is the one with the brewery logo on it. We'd like to have them all, but we can't. But whenever we can, we do. And Sierra Nevada is big enough that I've got the glass, and we'll go from there. Now, Bigfoot usually is on its own. It's a big beer, and I did a session one time where I had 6 years of Bigfoot that I did all in one session, and it was very interesting to see as you went back on each annual edition of it, the hops were beginning to mellow, but they were still pretty aggressive when I got back 6 years. So it'll be interesting on this one because I'm not really getting a lot of hoppiness in the nose. And again, it's only probably 3 years old, 2 years in my cellar, and then a year for Sierra Nevada. What I'm getting is I am getting vanilla, and I'm getting toasted oak, and raisin and caramel. And my God, you could just the bourbon is like so big you might just want to dive in here. We'll take a sip and see what it's like. Okay, so it's got that big signature caramel maltiness that Bigfoot is famous for, but I'm not getting. Maybe just a little bit of hops in the finish, a little bitterness, but it's nowhere near. In fact, it's rather sweet. There's a remarkable sweetness at the end. I think some of that is coming from the. I don't know where that's coming from. I'm getting the caramel. I'm getting the raisin. I'm getting the big vanilla, and the oakiness. But the wow, that is like it is so infused with the bourbon flavors that I don't know if. I don't remember well enough when I had it fresh to say that they've enhanced and maybe the hops have subsided. But at the same time, you get that sweetness in the finish, and then you do get a little bit at the very last, a little bit of the hops. So they're still there. There's a little hop bitterness, but to my taste, it's almost like a candy sugar sweetness at the very end, and then finally you get the alcohol warmth too. And I think one thing for me, and this could be just the power of suggestion, but I always think that when you take a beer like this and you age it in a bourbon barrel, they seem to have more alcohol. They don't, but I think it's the bourbon notes give it that impression of strength. So let's see what the alcohol content on this is. But I think it's around 9%. No, I'm sorry. It's stronger than normal Bigfoot. It's 12.2%. So maybe that's where that sweetness is coming from. It is. So it is a bigger version of Bigfoot. But wow, boy, is that good. I don't know if they still make it. If they do, and you see it, you probably should buy all they have. I wish I had bought more of it because it's so darn good. And with that, I will stop hogging the camera here, and I'll turn it over to Tom.
Well, howdy do. That's my signature greeting. Hey, John, I wanted to add one thing you were talking about the big tastings. The wonderful thing about them, like you said, is you get to try so many beers. The tough thing about them is your palate gets so taxed by the time you've made your way around a table. You're probably not tasting everything as fresh as you once were. So your opinion of a beer might be different had you not had all that stuff before it.
I agree. Absolutely. They're fun to do. It's good just, when you got a bunch of folks there and you're hanging out together.
Yeah, it's a great socialization, yeah.
I think you can get an impression of the beers, but
especially, if you're talking about doing big beers, especially if you're doing stouts or anything barrel aged, by the time you've had 3, 4, 5, or 6, I mean, by the time you get to 20 or 25, you're probably not tasting it as clear as if it was your first thing you tasted.
Absolutely. You're right.
So anyway, Having said that, I'm having a MILF, man. This is a Mother's MILF. It is an Imperial Stout. It's aged in, hope I remember here, because it's too dark to read it. It's aged in brandy, bourbon, rum, port, and whiskey barrels. Now, they don't expound on whiskey, so I don't know, other than bourbon, if they're talking about a rye whiskey or a Scotch, but it just says whiskey barrels. So anyway, it's aged 5 different ways. At their brewery, they actually do single versions of, from time to time, as specialties in their tap room. A couple months back, I had the just port barrel aged version. That was very interesting. It actually drank like a sour. Obviously, it's not a sour because, well, I mean, it got the sour from the port and not the yeast, but it had that consistency and the finish of a sour, if you're following me there. This one is interesting because you have all those other things going on. It is an Imperial Stout, so you have, on the nose, you have big chocolate, you have big coffee, you have big roasted barley, you have everything you expect from an Imperial Stout. Plus, you have that beautiful charred oak from the bourbon, and then you've got the oak from the other spirits, lending flavors to it. It starts off big and roasty. You get the big roasted malts are beautiful. You get the chocolate. You get the coffee. And now that I've had the just port version of this, now I can really find where the port is in this big version of it's there near the end. You get the bourbon right away, which imparts a lot of vanilla. Oh, excuse me. But near the end is that port that just kind of gives you these slight sour notes that kind of dries it up at the end, that doesn't allow it to get too sweet and too cloying. We talked about, if we were going to do this, I wanted to do the MILF, but if we were going to do this any day but Sunday, I considered doing this on location from White River, because we talked about doing other beers besides an Imperial Stout. White River has got a whiskey barrel aged IPA that is incredibly interesting. And if we were going to do this on a Friday or a Saturday, I was going to do it from that brewery just so I could show that beer to you. But I'm happy to do a Mother's Milk because they're also my local brewery. And who doesn't love them? I mean, you got to give them credit for coming up with that name, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's wrong. It's obnoxious. It just makes you want to go. Woo. Anyways, I'm Tom the Beer Whisperer. I'm going to send it on back to the moderator.
Tom, that sounds like a fantastic beer, and I think with that we'll pass the hat on over to Scott.
All right, here we go. First off, let me discuss my theories and it kind of like experiences with bourbon barrel aged beers, because I mean they could go one of two ways in my opinion. They could be done very, very well, or they could be completely destroyed by overdoing the bourbon flavors inside of the beers, because you want a very well done and very crafted barrel aged beer. You want all of the flavors to kind of meld together. Where if you're getting this beer and all you're tasting is the bourbon spirits, I mean, to me that's not done well, because of the fact that that's all you're getting. You're getting a punch of bourbon right in the mouth or in the aroma, and that's all you're getting in the flavor. I mean, they haven't taken the time to age the beer well enough for all of the flavors to kind of meld together. That's kind of why I kind of like went off the beaten path here, because of the fact that what I'm drinking today, I mean, they do have a bourbon barrel-aged version of this, but I decided to go with the rum-aged version. It's done very well. This is the Jackie O's Oil of Aphrodite, and this is the rum barrel-aged version. And they actually have 13 versions of this beer alone. And it's like they've done barrel aging with rum, they've done it with the bourbon, they've done a mint, they've done so many different ones. And it was just like, it was hard to choose, but I'm like, I've had it fresh and the regular version of it, and it was a great beer on its own. And I think that they have done just a wonderful job with this. It also reminds me of the bourbon barrel aged version. You do get a lot of chocolate, you do get a little bit of roasted coffee, maybe a little bit of toffee in it. The hops, though, I don't get it like hops at all. It might be because of the spirits in it, but at the same time, it's just like, it's more earthier. It's got a dark earthy tone to it. It's got a little bit of a nuttiness before the rum hits you, and then it kind of like leaves you with the maltiness of, how do I want to say this, the maltiness of the beer with like a caramel note in the back note of like maybe the rum, because it all just like melded together, and it just leaves your tongue and your palate coated in this. And it was just, for the price point, I mean, even though it's like 11.5% alcohol by volume and a 12.7 full ounces, just a little over 12 ounces, I mean, you're talking like 13, 14 bucks just for the bottle. And I was like, I'd pay that all day, every day for this, because it was done right. So with that said, I'll go ahead and hand it back off to the moderator.
All right, Scott, thank you. And you bring up some really good points. I mean, it's all about balance. I mean, you want the base beer to shine through. In my case, the more I sip at it, the breadiness of Bigfoot is there. The caramel maltiness is there. The dark fruit of the raisin, the things that I want in the beer are there, but I still get all of the benefits of the barrel aging as well. I picked that up. But as you said, you don't want the barrel aging to drown out the base beer. By the same token, I've had some beers that claim to be barrel aged, and they go the other way. You just don't really pick up a lot of character from the aging. In fact, this was maybe a month or two ago, but Taco Mac had they had a special tapping beer. It was one of the beers of the month. It was a stout. I forget who it was. I think it was some brewer in North Carolina. I think it might have been. I can't think of Lone Rider. It might have been. But anyway, I mean, everybody had ordered it because wow, they just tapped it at 5 o'clock. So we've all got to try it. So we're all sitting around and we're like, where the hell's the bourbon? Nobody could pick up any bourbon in it, and
wow.
You can't. It's a balance. It's all about balance.
Right.
That's an excellent point. You don't want too much, but by the same token, you don't want too little either. You want that benefit, and you want to preserve the base beer.
Right.
So, go ahead, Scott. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I said you're exactly right. I mean, I was surprised that you actually experienced not enough.
Yeah.
I've especially in my examples with anything that has been barrel aged, I'm like, the one thing that is the hardest for me to find is like the char or maybe like the vanilla smoothness. But I always get the spirits out of it. I've never had one that it's just like I could never like pick up the spirit notes from it.
Yeah, to me, I think it would be a product of not enough time on the wood.
Yeah, right.
Trying to rush it into production, saying we barrel aged it, and this was a draft only specialty. So to me, it just smacks of okay. We did a, and this brewery is usually pretty good. I like their beers, but anyway, it is a pitfall. Right. And that said, now we'll let our guest speaker Justin have a chance at the mic. Take it away, Justin.
All right. Well, speaking on experiences that I've had with other barrel-aged ales, I've actually had the oak-aged IPA from Dogfish Head, Burton Bourbon. It was very good, and it wasn't aged in anything but just the oak barrels. So it does go back to what you guys were saying before about when they would ship them overseas and you got some of the oak flavors out of them. The oak flavors definitely do come through there. Another one of my favorite bourbon barrel aged, it's actually one of my top favorite beers is Death's Tar from Revolution Brewing. That one was loaded with flavor. Now, tonight I am doing the piece the money can't buy from Clown Shoes. It is a quad. It's a Belgian style quad ale, and it was aged in bourbon barrels. And I do believe. Sorry. Yeah, I do believe it does. It does come in at 11.5, and right off the bat, when you first take your first sip, you get the bourbon in it, but it's also backed up by many other flavors. You get a lot of dark fruit notes in there, a little bit of plum and dates, but there's also seems like a lot of lighter fruit notes in there as well. Maybe a little bit of banana. It definitely does have that caramel malt, especially on the finish, is very nice. And then you got that bourbon, just rides all the way throughout it. And you really don't get, I don't get a lot of the alcohol bite on it itself, but it does come in, like I said, at 11.5. So, go ahead.
All right, sounds great. Appreciate it. I've always been impressed by Clown Shoes beers. It's Mercury Brewing, of course, and they do Ipswich, and they've been around for a while. But great brewer, and that sounds like a fantastic beer. I haven't tried it, but based on what your recommendation right there, I'm going to be out looking for it for sure. We do get Clown Shoes beers here in Georgia, so I will be on the hunt for it. I do have some commentary from our own Red Rooster, who couldn't make it. He's working tonight. We did have. I just wanted to mention that the logistics of trying to get a bunch of people together to do these videos is tough. It's not anybody's fault. It's just the way thing is. We have people in different time zones and people with different work schedules and then other things going on beside that. So. It's great to have as many people as we can, and we had floated the idea of guest reviewers before, and I think Justin has proved tonight what a great idea that was. So thanks again for joining us. But I'll go over to I've got Red sent me a picture of the beer he wants to talk about, and then I'll play his voice messages. And there it is. It's Jack's Abbey Lager Nest Monster. If you can see that on my tablet.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and let me get his voice messages here. There you go. I know somewhere out there he is probably wondering what the heck we're doing. I don't know if he can. I don't think he can watch us at work, so he's probably wondering what we're up to right now. But let me plug this in. There we go. Oh, he is watching. He sent me a message saying he's watching. That's good. Okay. Here we go.
Barrel-aged beers in the modern craft brewery movement. We have to put it into context. What we're really talking about is what started about 20 years ago in the mid-90s with breweries using bourbon barrels to age imperial stout. The early examples of barrel-aged beers that I can recall were Goose Island, Bourbon County, which of course has blown up and become iconic. The Denver Chop House, I think, was very early on with a barrel-aged beer. Old Dominion was another one that did a barrel-aged beer really early. And all those examples were bourbon barrels, where they got barrels from a number of different bourbon distilleries, and they would put an imperial stout into the bourbon barrel. So your very early examples were almost exclusively bourbon barrels and Russian imperial stout. Over the years, of course, a number of different barrels have been used: wine barrels, cognac barrels, rum barrels, tequila barrels. If you look at breweries today, what brewery today doesn't have a barrel aging program? So it's something that has gradually gotten more and more popular, and to the point now where every brewery pretty much has some kind of a barrel aging program in place. But to get back to the history of it, it was bourbon barrels and it was imperial stout. I think imperial stout lends itself very well to barrel aging, and in particularly bourbon barrels. I think that's a good combination. You got all those dark malts, you've got that alcohol, you've got the chocolate notes, you've got the licorice, and of course you get the character from the barrel. You get the vanilla, you get the oak, you get that leathery undertones, you get it all. So it's really a great combination of big aromas, big flavors, big alcohol. So these are the type of beers that are on for the timid. So it's one of those beer styles, either you like it or you don't. It's really popular with craft beer geeks, but it's not something that you would want to start a novice off with. So it's something that you really need to kind of build up. I've been drinking barrel-aged beers for probably about 18 years now, maybe a little longer. I think one of the very first examples I ever had was at the District Chop House in Washington, D.C., and that was in the late 90s. And they did a bourbon barrel imperial stout that was aged in old granddad barrels. And I remember that being very boozy. They still do it. You can have it on cask at the bar. I don't think you can get growlers, but I think that's the only place you can get it. But it's a very, very good imperial stout as a base, and it's got a very, very boozy, bourbony flavor and aroma to it. So that's one of my favorite ones still to this day. Another early example for me was Old Dominion had a beer called Oak Barrel Stout, and that was aged in Smith Bowman, Virginia Gentleman bourbon barrels, and that was a brewery only one that they had, and it became so wildly popular they decided to mass produce it and bottle it, but they couldn't age it in barrels, so what they decided to do was take a mesh bag and put that in with the fermenter, and they had the bourbon-soaked oak chips along with vanilla beans, and that would steep in the stout, and that's how they mass-produced a bourbon-aged beer. So unfortunately, I can't be with you guys, but I do have one that I would say I would review. It's Jack's Abbey Lager Ness Monster Imperial Baltic Porter, and that is a 15% Baltic Porter that is aged in bourbon barrels for 6 months. So that's an excellent, excellent beer. Baltic Porters are really imperial stouts, but they're lagered and brewed with a lager yeast, so they're a little more smoother and a little more polished and clean. But the bourbon barrel aromas and flavors really shine in this beer, and the Baltic Porter is a perfect base for it. It's dark malty, chocolatey, roasty, clean, polished. It's just a phenomenal beer. I actually picked it up at the brewery, and I had it on draft at the brewery, and it's a brewery-only beer. You have to go to the brewery to actually get it. If they're distributing it now outside the brewery, I'm not sure, but you won't find it outside of Massachusetts or wherever they distribute it. It's only to a couple states. So if you can ever get your hands on it and trade for it, it's well worth trying. So I love barrel-aged beers. I like them all. I like all different kinds, but I think my favorite is still Russian Imperial Stout in a bourbon barrel. To me, that's really what barrel-aging beers are for me. I personally love them more than any other kind. So, and I like the communist iconography that is always attached to them, much to the chagrin of some Hitler mustache-wearing bitch.
Okay, so you now know that it was Red Rooster. But I agree with him. I mean, I love all these beers too. I really enjoy seeing the explosion these days of the barrel aging, not not just the different types of spirits, as Red alluded to, but a lot of styles too. I mean, Red Brick here in Atlanta, they're doing imperial stouts, but they're doing Belgian triples that they're aging and quads. We've got some other Georgia brewers. There's a upstart Three Taverns. They got a $2 million brewery, and all they do is Belgian stuff. And they've got some bourbon barrel aged quads and triples and doubles that are fantastic. I know Heavy Seas did a Weizenbach that they aged. There's just, you name it. I'm just waiting for. Actually, I think there was a barrel aged Budweiser, if I'm not mistaken. But it really adds flavor and character. And I'll tell you, our good buddy Dave Coulter. I wish he could have been here tonight. But one of the things that I always like to hear Dave say in a video review, he talks about how good a beer would go with a big juicy steak and a baked potato. And I'll tell you, I made dinner for the wife and I, and we had a big juicy steak, and we had twice baked potatoes, bread, and salad, and I'm kind of full. But one thing about these beers, and Dave will tell you too, certain beers, they're made to be, a digestif and enjoyed after the meal. And Dave says that frequently, and these beers are great for that. I'll tell you that. Right now, I was a little bit full, but a beer like this, you drink a glass of that and you'll be good to go again. It just helps the digestive process, and they're perfect for that. And so, with that said, I would I'll open it up to discussion. Anybody and everybody.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll just start this off. Especially when you were talking about all the different barrel properties and also the different type of beers and the different type of spirits that they've been using now. Justin's drinking on a Clown Shoes, quad that was done in a bourbon, barrel. They had a fantastic 4th year anniversary that was done in a tequila barrel. And I believe it was a barley wine done in a tequila barrel. It was just amazing. And when I first started this the little discussion here, I happened to show off the Triple Bock. Matter of fact, the Triple Bock was actually done in a used Jack Daniels barrel. And he originally found them. He was like, I went through Home Depot, where I guess all great ideas come about. He was like, and I started thinking about him. He was like, because they actually taken these barrels and cut them up into planters. And he was like, well, why can't I get whole barrels? So he contacted the distributor and eventually got through to the distillery, and he got a hold of some barrels. I mean, that's all it takes. Certain people do certain things. I know the Sam Adams, they have a good relationship with who is it? Buffalo Trace, and they do a lot of their stuff in Buffalo Trace barrels. I do love to taste the different types of beer that are done in name brand. When they do actually release the name of the distillery and what spirit it is, because then you could go back and you can taste the spirit and you can find the differences between the beer and the spirit, or have them side by side, and therefore in little sips and little whatever. I mean, you could sit there and pick apart both of them and be like, okay, well, this adds this to it, or this adds this to it. And you could find out just how complex and or how the art style of brewing is really done.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that too. I like to know, which barrels are used. I don't think anybody could ever sit down with, and blind test barrel aged beers and say, oh yeah, that was Jack Daniels and this one's Maker's Mark. I don't know. I have a hard time thinking that that would be possible. But at the very least, if as you said, you can compare and try and train your palate to see if you can find any similarities.
I I just had one with Justin the other day when we went to a tasting. It was Innocent Gun. Did their Irish whiskey, and I swear that it was Jameson whiskey that they used for that.
It definitely did taste like there was a bunch of Jameson in that one.
Yeah, their beers are really good. I like the lineup. They did a winter brew. I didn't see it this year, but last year, and that was really amazing. One thing Red said that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. I don't know. I do appreciate what he said about imperial stouts, because I think the dark maltiness of an imperial stout plays off well against, especially the vanilla notes and the oakiness that
yes, it
aging can add. But
the imperial stout lends itself well to the bourbon barrel. I think sometimes if you take a lesser beer, it won't hold up to the barrel aging. But if you start with a big beer, then the bourbon barrel doesn't overtake the flavors; it just adds to it.
Yeah, I agree that it really works well with those beers, but I would say bigger beers rather than just imperial stuff. And that's personal preference. He was clear that that was a favorite for him. But
Right.
I found, actually for me, barley wines too. And this being one of them. They're big enough. They can handle it. But you're absolutely right. If it's try and barrel age a Belgian wit beer, and you're not going to end up with happy results at the end of the day, most likely. But the base beer has to be able to stand up to it. But I do like barley.
Well, a lot of it depends on how it was aged and what it's aged in. I mean, the one beer I was talking about earlier, the White River IPA that they age in Copper Creek whiskey barrels. What I'm talking about is not a current trendy, high hop, very citrus, tropical fruit IPA. I'm talking about more of a closer to a traditional, an English IPA aged in a whiskey barrel. I think folks that want an IPA to taste like an IPA is today, they're going to hate that beer. But for me, I loved it because I saw what they were going for. The bourbon barrel or the whiskey barrel does add a lot of flavor, but you can still tell what the original beer was. But you do lose some of that hoppage.
Yeah, that would stand to reason. All right. Anybody else? Any other comments?
I remember a Founder's beer. What was it called? It was Doom. It was an IPA, I believe, aged in bourbon barrels. It was an Imperial IPA aged in bourbon barrels. And it was just phenomenal because, I mean, not only did you get that big upfront fruity and citrusy notes, but at the same time, you did get bourbon. It was just amazing to find that it actually played very well off each other. And I was just like, I couldn't imagine, drinking a bourbon that had those kind of like fruity esters or like the leafy green notes. But I think that it was just like they added so much caramel malt and up the hops so much that they just kind of melded together. And it was just, that was only released in their Backstage series, and I had it off tap, and it blew me away.
I've heard about it. I've never tried that one, but I've heard good things about it. I know that we were talking earlier about the stronger beers, but as I recall, the beer that I mentioned and Red mentioned was the Founders, not the Founders. I'm sorry, the Dominion Oak Barrel Stout, and that, as I recall, actually is as good as it was. I think that was only about 6% ABV, so that wasn't a particularly strong beer.
I could just imagine the alcohol giving it kind of like playing off of the wood and kind of like mellowing out, and therefore, because I take notes kind of from Jim's discussion before, it was just like he brewed the triple bock came in at like 18%, but when it was not barrel aged, he said it was so boozy that the alcohol became a flavor of the beer. He was like, at a high alcohol content like that, you do not want that because it's very harsh. It's very, sometimes it can be cloying, and you want to be able to tone it down. So it's like if you have a big beer like that, you know, even if it's not in a bourbon aged or bourbon barrel or whiskey barrel or tequila barrel, no matter what kind of barrel it is, you know, maybe, you know, if any kind of brewer sees this and they want to take notes, man, just take it and age it in oak barrels, because that's what's going to kind of smooth it out, give you maybe a little bit of a vanillic flavor, but at the same time, it's going to tone down that alcohol.
And I'm right now not ignoring you guys. One of the benefits of having my website is that I can do a search on bourbon and find some of the bourbon. So I was actually looking for that beer that I talked about that I had at Taco Mac that I didn't get much bourbon in it, but it's not coming up on the search. But I did come up with a couple of, so some of the more memorable beers for me. Of course, there was the Black Angel Black Sour Ale aged on tart cherries and bourbon barrels that I had from Wicked Weed. I actually, that was probably one of the best beers I've ever had, period. That stuff was like phenomenal. When I went to Asheville almost a year ago, you know, I've been there several times, but that was the first time I've been to Wicked Weed, because they weren't there the time before, and they do tons of barrel aged stuff, and everything they do is really phenomenal. But that was the first beer I tried, and I tried a bunch of their other beers, and it was so good that I hit a couple of other brew pubs, and then I stumbled back to Wicked Weed to finish the night with one of them, and I ended up bringing back 3 or 4. It was like $15 a bottle for this stuff, but the tartness, you know, I think really that might have, it's a beer that, you know, you don't think of necessarily as one that's a candidate for barrel aging, but the tartness really stood up to the, you know, the barrel aging, and you got all those elements, and they worked so well together. So as far as expense-wise, you know, these beers tend to run, I think, around $10 a bottle or so, or 12. Some of them are higher, but there are bargains out there too. I know Abita's got one now. I had it at Taco Mac, but I haven't had it in the bottle, and that was I think it's $9.99 in the bottle. And if you're lucky enough to, if you get Full Sail beers, they have a barrel aged imperial stout for $5.99. That's just, it's killer. I mean, it's a great beer. You'd pay $10 for it and say, hey, it was worth that $10 and then a lot more. But to get it for $5.99, that's one of the ones that really sticks out for me too. So
nice. That's a good price point.
Yeah, $5.99, you can't go wrong. So.
Right. I mean, it beats my paying for Sam Adams Utopia.
Yeah.
That beats it all day.
What is that, about $225?
Right. I mean, Sam's Utopia, that ran me like over $200 a bottle, but all in all, if people haven't had it, I mean, it's just one of those once in a lifetime beers. If you can get a hold of it, if you really want to try something that's unique and that is only done traditionally brewing, yeah, go for it, because I mean, it's kind of like a meld of all three. Like Sam Adams Triple Bock, the Millennium, and they barrel age it again. All three of them, you know, the mixture that they make up with Utopia, go into the Buffalo Trace barrels, and it's just phenomenal. I was actually pretty surprised on all the flavor complexity that I got out of it, and I'd pay for it again in a heartbeat, because it was just an absolute phenomenal product, and it lasted me 2 years.
Well, that's the best thing I've ever tasted in my life.
Well.
You know, this MILF was a 4-pack. It's 11%, 50 IBUs. It was $12. That is incredibly reasonable for anything barrel aged.
Nice.
Yeah, the Red Brick stuff around here, they do barrel aged stuff, and it runs around $10.98, $11.98 a 4-pack. So that's about, I think, about common. A lot of them seem to come in 750s and bombers.
Well, when you consider what was the Bourbon County going for this year, about $20 a 4-pack, or $5 a beer. I mean, yeah. It's absolutely freaking ridiculous. And personally, I don't think that beer's that good. It isn't the best barrel-aged beer out there. It's just not. It is just marketed extremely well, but it's not the best.
Actually, where I had it, it was actually free. That
Well,
was a Tacomac.
folks,
And,
it
right, so I just said, can
was
you know,
just
and
$20 a 4-pack. There you go.
the bartenders know me there, so it was like, I don't know, an 11-ounce glass was like $15 or something, and I didn't. You know, I just want to try it. I hadn't had it, and I'm like, and I forget which one. I know they have several, but I said, can I just have a sample? And she poured me a really good sized sample, and I was like, okay, that's good. Give me a Sam Adams instead or something. Actually, I was at the Fred bar, and that's where they have all of the Tacomacs have good beer, they have really good beer, and then they have great beer. But the Fred has nothing but really top-notch stuff. So I forget what I had, but it was something pretty good that I had instead of the Bourbon County, and it was a lot more reasonable than that stuff was. So.
Yeah, I think another thing with all these barrel aging, it's just like you both said, it's marketing, it's supply and demand, but at the same time, it's just like, dude, seriously, you cannot make me believe that sometimes this beer is going to cost you, $20 a 4-pack, especially when, it's like, especially the Bourbon County stuff. The reason they do that every year is because they know people are going to go out and spend money. I mean, Black Friday, day after, come on. Everybody's already in a money spree. That they set it up perfectly. I mean, I don't like that you're paying $20 a 4-pack. I mean, I even have a problem right now with Hop Slam being out. I do not want to pay like $18 a 6-pack for Hop Slam right now.
No, and I think that the proof to your theory there is take a look at like the Full Sail, like I talked about earlier.
Right.
If they can give you a bomber of that for $5.99, so that would be that's if you extended it out, that'd be like $12 equivalent for
right.
That would be 44 ounces, just about a 4-pack, right? Pretty close, as opposed to 20. But bombers generally run higher than 12-ounce bottles in 4 and 6-packs anyway. So you've got that factor built in too. But if they can do that, and I'll tell you, that beer is fantastic. I mean, I think it's just as good as some of the top-of-the-line ones out there. And to your point with Hop Slam, there's loads of IPAs. I like the Bridge. So the Bridgeport Hop Czar. To me, people say, "Oh, you're crazy."
About the Bourbon County. A lot of it's just marketing and hype. You put the right amount of marketing, the right amount of hype, and everybody, every wannabe beer snob is all of a sudden, oh, this is the beer I have to have. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when I could walk into the super or walk into my liquor store and buy Bourbon County Stout right up. I mean, I didn't have to stand in line. I didn't have to get a ticket. I didn't have to win a raffle to buy a 4-pack, but now you do. It's the same thing with Hop Slam. It's all and KBS. It's all about marketing.
Yep.
And that's the big dirty secret amongst craft beer folks, is that we like to think that's just for the macro guys, but now we've bought into all this nonsense and hype, and we will stand in line for stuff. I won't do it. I'll buy what I buy.
Especially, we were just talking about IPAs.
I'll tell you that. I won't stand
out on IPAs.
I won't win a raffle. I won't stand in line for a ticket. I ain't doing it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Tom. Be careful when you say we, unless you got a mouse in your pocket, because I don't stand in those lines. I don't do those things. And I understand those breweries charge that amount of money because there's a huge line of idiots willing to pay that amount of money.
Right.
Frankly, and if there's a line of idiots that'll pay $20, next year they'll charge them $25.
Right.
I'm not one of them. I don't do that.
Either Imperial or double IPAs, I'm going to buy a head of Hop Slam. I'm not standing in line. There's at least a half dozen barrel-aged stouts I'm going to buy above Bourbon County. I ain't standing in line. I'm not buying the hype. I ain't doing it.
Yep. And that's why I'll buy the Hop Czar instead of the Hop Czar. Or there's loads of other IPAs.
I agree with the Hop Czar. I do that. That's very
underrated. About a Optimum IPA. There's tons of great beers. Heady Topper is another one that gets all that hype, and Pliny the Elder. And although Pliny, I don't think they really overprice it, but compared to what they could do.
Right. I mean, Pliny the Elder. I mean, most places. I mean, it seems to go. What is it? It's not even a 22er, is it?
Yeah, I think it's like 16.9, right?
Right. I think it's a little over a pint. So I mean, it's
It's like
like
$5, right?
$5 or $6. I mean, I'd pay that all day.
Yeah, yeah. That. I don't think they do the same thing. But for my part, I won't buy those expensive because I think the big secret that shouldn't be a secret is if you know enough about craft beer, you know that there's loads of other beers out there that are just as good that are a third or a quarter the price.
Right.
And you can find them, And so if you would pay those prices, you're not really doing it because you're doing it because you want to be in the in crowd because everybody else is drinking those beers. And I got a whale, or whatever. But
or like Red would say, you're not one of the in crowd. You're not a hipster.
Folks all over social media showing you what they bought. Oh, look what I got. There is that, and that kind of ruins it.
Yep, I agree. I agree. But we do that too. I mean, but I don't think it's the same thing.
No.
I post everything I drink.
Right.
And I'm, and Scott will appreciate this because he's the same way. But I get as excited. I probably get more excited when Sam Adams comes out with a new beer than when I find a whale. Right?
I'm all about the bargains, so yeah.
But it's because they're, those beers are great. They're priced, but they're great beers too. So.
Yeah, I had to.
Oh, we're dying for that one. We saw someone post. Before we had it, and we were dying.
Well, look at that. I mean, I just got a 6-pack for $8.99 when I'm not going to spend $17.99 for Hop Slam. I mean, that's a killer deal compared to Hop Slam.
The haters are going to hate, whatever you do.
I told you about earlier that I just popped earlier today. I had the 4th beer of my 6-pack, and I like it more the more beers I pop of. That's why people that only buy singles, I kind of wonder, because sometimes when I'm on that 4th, 5th, or 6th beer of that 6-pack, I find something that I missed 1, 2, or 3 beers in.
And that's very true, but unfortunately, there's so many great beers out there today. You can't. Red and I were just talking about this the other day, and as much as you'd like to buy a 6-pack of all of them, you can't. You want to try so many different beers.
Right.
Yeah, I buy very few singles. I just buy 6-packs, and because I'm always learning something. The 2nd, 3rd, or 4th beer in, it just seems ridiculous to me to buy one because I'm not really feeling it. I may not get everything that beer has to offer from just one.
That's why I don't buy 12-packs anymore. I just stick to mostly 6-packs unless it's my go-to Boston Lager. I mean, I'll just keep that all day, every day, but I don't buy, 12-packs anything anymore. I just buy 6ers.
I think for my part, I tend to dwell on them, and I can get enough out of a single to make a determination on it. But one point that you do make that is very valid is that, and what I like to do is that if it interests me enough, if I've bought a single and it interests me enough, then I will go back and get a 6-pack of it. So
there you go.
And that allows you to delve a little bit further into it.
Right. 6-packs. I don't buy a lot of singles. I do buy some 750s, but I rarely buy a single 12-ounce beer.
I'm like you, John. If I taste it, if I go through a place where I can do a mix of 6, I'll go ahead and mix it up, and then if I find something in that mix of 6 that kind of piqued my interest, I'll go back and I'll get some more. Definitely do a more in-depth take of it.
Yeah, one of the good things here about Total Wine is that they have I think they have something about 1,000 or 1,200 different beer varieties, but everything that they sell is 6-packs, and they have everything you can get in singles, and you just buy the singles. You don't have to mix a 6 or buy certain quantities. You just, if you want a single of it, pull it out. Most of the time they have an entire aisle of nothing but singles. So
that's why I go to the spot that
I like to try as many different beers as I can. I'm not a ticker in the definition. Yeah, ticker is somebody that tries a beer once and then, I've had that. I can't drink that again.
Right.
No, that makes no sense to me. What the hell's the point then? If the whole point of trying all these different beers is to find the really good ones. And that's why I always go back to, especially, certain times of the year with seasonals, I tend more than other times to go back to old favorites. But even with, old standbys and stuff, Brooklyn beers, I love Brooklyn beers. I'll drink, I'll pick up a 6 of Brooklyn Brown all the time because that's such a great beer, or the East India Pale Ale, some of the other beers, and countless other breweries too. So, but
I definitely had a couple this week I went back to. I had to go get more of them. That was the Burton Batten and Ballast Point's Habanero Sculpin.
you went back and got more?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That's the whole point. That's why you try the singles. And sometimes you find out a beer's not that good, and it's better to have a single than it gets stuck.
Well, sometimes, I mean, especially up here in our neck of the woods, because pretty much me and Justin shop at some of the same places. It's like I try to suggest, and I'm like, okay, but you got to watch when you go to certain stores because you don't know when it's been there. Like I just went and bought a West Stefaner, one of their original, the lager, and it was skunked all to hell. And I was like, okay, I've been through this. Don't pick it up from there right now. Wait till their shipment comes in clean. Because, I mean, it's like some of these places up here, unless they are known to go through beer after beer after beer after beer after beer, they just sit there. And they, maybe they'll come by and dust them, but you don't know unless they actually put a production code on there where you can say, okay, this is this date, or they have like the Sam's. Sam's, I mean, you could pick up a bottle of Sam's and you could read that all day, every day, how fresh it is. Where other people just, this one, it was kind of hard for me to see. Yep. They don't have anything on it, so I'm picking up other bottles. Like I just picked up, recently I picked up a bottle of the Ovelia Abbey Triple. And I'm waiting to try that. And I'm like, okay, so how old is this? And I finally found a production code on it and was able to read it. And I'm like, okay, well, it's still within its allowance, and I can also age it, and it'll still be good.
Yeah. A beer like a triple or a quad's going to age up for a while anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But you're right. There's a lot of breweries that don't. Luckily here in Atlanta, I tell you, beers just fly off the shelves. If you go in Total Wine, if you go in there at the week after Thanksgiving, it's amazing. The shelves are like half empty because people have bought everything. And so they have excellent turnover. So I really haven't found that to be a problem as far as getting old beer. Some of the other stores don't have such a turnover. But sometimes that's a good thing. I've found some gems that they've already aged for me that have still been really good. So. But I think we could wrap it up. I think this has been a great session, and I want to thank everybody again. What's that, Tom?
We ran a bit long, but.
Well, that's a good thing because people can, they got our barrel age take, and if they want to watch us babble on from there, then they're welcome to do so, and they can always hit the off button if they don't want to. But anyway, I think this has been actually probably the best production yet, and I thank you guys and everybody out there. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back in another month or so with the next exciting episode of Honest Craft Beer Reviews Panel Reviews. Thanks everybody.
For joining.
Thank you.